Yay!
Yay! Good evening. Good evening, ladies. Good morning. Good afternoon. We're West Coast. Morning. It's still morning, is it? Afternoon.
Yep, morning for me.
And Karen, are you?
Morning
You still
as well. Mid-morning, yes.
mid-morning? So, good morning. Welcome. Hello to everyone. Welcome to our chat, our TSM chat for another week. Another month. And we're very, very pleased today to have the two founders of Thrive from the States, Karen Dion and Lain. So you'll know Katie. Karen, I've been trying to twist her arm for ages and ages and ages to come and join us. So thank you, Karen. I know that it's, I hope I haven't bullied you into it or anything else.
Happy to be here.
Welcome.
I love talking about TSM, so happy to be here today.
Yeah. And I was telling to someone this afternoon who's going to be joining us tonight that you are full of wisdom, so not to build you up on a pedestal or anything too much. But yeah, so and anyone that's joining us, if you've got any questions at all, please feel free to ask away in the comments section. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have on TSM. But I'm going to start off just something different tonight, Katie, if that's all right. I'm going to pick on both of you and just start off with something a little bit more fun that I used to do in the early days. But just a quick 3 questions for you, just to anyone that hasn't met you or anything else. So, can I ask you both what country you would both like to visit most that you haven't visited? Karen.
Oh, wow. That's a hard question that I haven't visited. I would say Thailand.
Wow. Okay. Yep. Katie.
And for me, probably go to Israel.
Israel. Wow, that'd be nice. Perfect.
What about you, Bruce?
Okay, question. I thought I was gonna. I was gonna get away with that one. I've been there already, but I would love to go back to Kenya. I was born and brought up in Kenya, and I'd love to go back and go and see a few things from where I grew up initially. So yeah. Okay, question 2. Your favorite food, Katie. I'll go with you this time, so Karen's got time to think about it.
Karen probably knows this because I talk about it a lot. A cheeseburger is my all-time favorite food ever. I just could have one every day. I don't, but I'm like very American in that way. So cheeseburger.
A proper American cheeseburger.
Yeah, any cheeseburger really, but yeah, a good American cheeseburger. Yeah.
Perfect.
What about you, Karen?
Yeah, that's another hard question. I would have to say like a really big plate of king crab legs with fresh butter. Yeah.
Wow.
I haven't had those in a long time.
My mouth is drooling a little bit. I'm hungry.
Bruce,
it's food time at the moment. What's my favorite? I don't know. It depends on what day of the week it is. As you can see, anything sweet, anything ice cream.
Yeah.
That's not a meal. Spaghetti bolognese. I love. So. Okay, and finally, favorite band or musician, Karen.
Oh gosh, I would have to say probably just go really traditional. So probably the Rolling Stones. Classic.
Rolling Stones. Yeah.
Man. So I don't really know band names very well, to be honest. So I don't know if I could name. I listen to a lot of Christian music, so there are several bands that I love, but I honestly don't know their name. I know their songs. Bruce, I've told you about some of them. But yeah, sorry, not the best answer.
No, that's fine. It was just a icebreaker. And I think I would probably go for Bob Marley or anything along the African reggae roads. So yeah. So thank you very much. That's just a quick, just break the ice kind of thing. So, thank you very much, guys, for coming on. And again, like I said, if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to fire away. I think I'll probably let you guys introduce yourselves. You're both the co-founders of Thrive. What I'll probably do is I'll probably just facilitate anything that comes in tonight, and I'll let you two guys my wife would love me to hear me saying this. That I'd love to let you guys do the talking instead of me. So. But does one of you want to introduce yourself and what you do, and a little bit about what you do?
Go ahead, Karen, since this is your first time.
So my name's Karen Dion. I'm the co-founder of Thrive along with Katie. And like so many people, I discovered TSM through Claudia Christian's TED Talk about, gosh, it's been now going on 6 years, maybe a little more ago. And interestingly enough, I had been working in the health and wellness field, but prior to that, I had my license as an addiction counselor, and had just seen failure in that system to the point where I had left the field, and and I wasn't finding success in my own life, right, with traditional treatment. And so when I heard Claudia's TED Talk, I thought, wow, something about this just really resonates with me. And like many people, it sounded too good to be true. And like, how could I have not heard of this, having been in the treatment industry? Like, if this was valid, I certainly would have heard of it, right? Was my first thought. So how could it really be true? But it just made sense. She was pretty compelling in her story and in her, the way that she told that the medication worked for her. So I did my own research and very quickly just decided it was something I was going to try for myself. And within months, it was just a dramatic difference in mainly how like my internal experience of what I felt about alcohol. That internal experience of wanting it all the time, whether I was controlling my drinking or not drinking or drinking freely, it was always a kind of mental obsession. And the naltrexone took that away really quickly for me. I was a fast responder. And so it just seemed like a miracle. Like everybody should, like my thought was everybody should know about this. Like everybody needs to know that this is there. And why don't people know? I just was, flabbergasted. It works so well. Of something that I had fought with for so many years, and then within months, it was just like erased, and so that set me on this journey. At that time, I had that experience and that background, but I didn't know how to reach people with this message. And so, I started out with just working with people one-on-one, as you and Katie have both done, coaching people through this process. I did that for several years. And then Katie and I met, and she and I had gone through TSM about the same time period, but we didn't know each other until a couple of years ago. And we just decided to come together and collaborate. We had complementary skill sets to build out something that we both had a vision for, and that was to have a bigger impact and to really get the word out about TSM and to support people through the process. That taking in from just learning about the medication and learning about naltrexone and how to use it properly, all the way through recreating their life after no longer being addicted to alcohol. And so, that started our journey. And we started, gradually creating and building this platform to support people through the TSM process. And so now I'm happy to say we've got several hundred members, and, we are making an impact in the world and really taking people step by step through the process and helping them not just take the medication properly, but envision their life past alcohol being the central focus of their life. And how do you do that? Like, how do you change what you believe about alcohol? How do you change your habit of what you do at the end of the day? What do you do when difficult emotions arise or difficult stressors arise in life instead of going to the liquor cabinet, right? And so these are things that are, beyond the medication even, but the medication is a tool that helps people regain enough control and enough feeling of self-efficacy that they can start making these intentional changes, right? Because the cravings now are back under control. They're no longer feeling driven and undermining themselves and their best intentions. They're actually able to implement these tools and make actual sustainable changes in their life.
And it all sounds a little bit. I had a message from someone the other day that basically just didn't believe what you were saying. Not for you specifically, but in regards to the Sinclair Method and that side of things. So When did you hear about it, Katie? I know that we always chat every month, but we never kind of go into, if you don't mind me questioning you tonight.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. In 2017, it was July of 2017. I remember very clearly when I started TSM. I may have heard about it. I think it was like a month or two before that, because it took me a couple months to get naltrexone. But yeah, same, saw that TEDx talk. I was always searching for an answer. Like, I kept trying and failing, but I kept searching for an answer and came across the Sinclair Method and seemed too good to be true, kind of like what you were saying, Bruce. But I was like, well, there's just another thing for me to try. I've tried so many other things. And I was just blown away by the results. Even though I did not respond as quickly as Karen did, I could see these small changes in my drinking that would have never happened before. Just, having an alcohol-free day that wasn't totally white-knuckled and forced. Not being able to finish an entire bottle of wine, no longer blacking out once I started the Sinclair Method, because I would black out a couple nights a week, just drink so much that it would be a brownout and then a blackout, and I wouldn't remember conversations with my husband or things I did, or even sometimes how I got home. And so this treatment just gradually over time, I saw myself regain control over alcohol. And I was just chatting with someone about this the other day, where I was kind of naive to, like, when I was starting the treatment, I was like, I drink too much alcohol. This pill will help me drink less. And it did. But there was so much more that it did for me with regards to not only changing my drinking, but changing my entire life. Because when you're, I felt like I was in this box where my whole world revolved around alcohol and where can I get my next drink? When will I get it? What will I drink? Where will I, like, all of these questions just day in and day out about alcohol. And as that started to kind of quiet down, I realized that I had mind space to kind of, go back to creative hobbies I used to enjoy, think about my future and what I wanted to do, when I wasn't spending every single night and free moment consuming alcohol. So, it was such an incredibly powerful change, because I wasn't being drawn to alcohol anymore. The other day on our live, someone said, you're alcohol free, but you're not free from alcohol. And that was exactly what sobriety was like before TSM. Like, I wouldn't be drinking, but my mind would be obsessing about alcohol. I'd be thinking about it. I wasn't free from it. And through TSM, I truly got free from it, to where it didn't occur to me to drink anymore. I just became indifferent to alcohol over time. And that just allowed me to, have a whole new lease on life and really, live life on my terms and not just, by the grips of, alcohol kind of dictating my every waking moment. So true freedom is what the Sinclair Method has brought.
And it's just, again, if anyone's on here and you've got any questions at all, please feel free to stick it on the chat. And there's not a question really, I don't think, that Katie and Karen have not come across. So please feel free to ask away. What was I going to say? Yeah, a lot of people think that it's sorry, I was checking a message there. A lot of people just say that it's that don't understand AUD, as you'd call it in the States, or alcohol dependency, that they think it's just a choice. It's just, well, just don't have the drink. Was that something that you experienced, Karen, or was it? Can you explain the difference between alcohol when it is a choice, when you just go to the bar or you go to the wedding and you just have a drink, to when it gets to the point where it just takes over?
Yeah, and I think, like anything, it exists on a spectrum, in terms of, how much control people feel like they have. But I think a common kind of feeling that most people have, regardless of the quantity that they drink when they have AUD, is that that they have that first drink, and then it kind of they are kind of chasing the euphoria afterwards. So it's like that first drink kind of triggers that compulsion to kind of keep chasing that buzz. So, I think that repeat the question one more time, Bruce.
And just the difference between the people just say that it's simply just a choice of not drinking.
Right.
It gets to the point where it actually controls you.
Yeah. So I think that, I think that those are the same people that, will go to the bar and have one or two drinks, and they don't understand the experience of what people have when they have this experience of kind of chasing that high that they get, because the euphoria in the addicted brain, right, is kind of going like this. And so with every drink, as soon as that euphoria starts subsiding, people are chasing the next drink, right? And so and also I think there's a phenomenon called the alcohol deprivation effect that Katie and you, I think, have probably talked about before. So even when people are abstaining, that they kind of feel this building of craving. And so it feels like there might be a period of time where they can just say no, that often is the case. People are able to not drink for a day or a week or a month even. They can do a 30-day challenge maybe. But they're still thinking about it all the time, and they're having to work really, really hard to resist it. So it seems like almost like just a matter of time before there's a trigger or a stressor in life or something else, right? They really haven't healed the physiology of the craving, which is what naltrexone does, right? So there's that physiological craving that happens when somebody's addicted to alcohol, that their brain is really just trained to anticipate this reward, this endorphin reward from alcohol. And so it doesn't feel, even though that willpower and self-control is still a factor to a certain degree, it's not sustainable, right? Eventually that willpower is going to wax or wane, or there's going to be something, because that craving's always there in the background, just kind of waiting for an opportunity, right? Whereas with naltrexone, it kind of resolves that whole problem, right? So there isn't that anticipation, that craving anymore. There's not that looking for that reward anymore, right? So it just kind of fades out, right? The interest kind of fades out over time. And so it really kind of takes the fight out of the dog, if you will, right? So, I mean, I think the people that make comments like that just, it's not insensitive necessarily. It's usually out of frustration with a loved one, that they just don't understand that experience of not being able to just stop or just control how much people drink, but understanding that there's a physiological driver behind that for people, that it's not really their fault. Like it's something that's happened in their brain, and now the naltrexone is going to work to reverse that, and it does that really, really well. And so I think it's really just education, helping people understand kind of what the driver and what the real true cause of people not reaching their drinking goals and is craving. The cravings are it just overcomes people's best intentions, right? And naltrexone corrects that.
And it's horrible. I mean, it's crippling for some people. I mean, like you said, it's on a scale. It's on I like to call it early onset dependency, right the way through to chronic dependency, and everything in between. And when it gets hold of people at whatever level, it becomes a horrible, just a horrible thing to deal with. So, I know, Katie, that you've been sober for a number of years through TSM. And I ask you this question every time, but just in case everyone's not heard about it, because it's something that fascinated me coming from an abstinent-based background with my work. What is the difference between abstinence before naltrexone and abstinence after, as you are now?
Yeah. There's no comparison. They're night and day, I have to be honest. And I struggled with alcohol for 10 years, and I tried to quit drinking over that period dozens of times, because I would have a really bad hangover and I'd be like, this is it. And maybe I would make it a day, a couple of days, and I'd be like, I can drink again. And then maybe other times I'd make it a couple of weeks, or even 6 months was the longest time I went being sober before TSM. And the thing of it was like Karen was talking about, it was really this internal battle where it's like I had an itch that I couldn't scratch with regards to just desiring alcohol and not being able to have it. And it was incessant. It was daily, to the point where my days revolved around trying to avoid triggers, places, TV shows, people, anything that could trigger me to want to drink. I really had to avoid those things. And it really was a battle every day, to where I wanted to drink every day, and I just was denying myself that desire, essentially. And so it was really relying on willpower. And I honestly remember feeling like like, this is the visual I got, that a future without alcohol is bleak, it's gray, it's boring. Like, how am I ever going to get through life without not being able to drink? Like, that just sounds terrible. And so eventually, like, I made it that 6 months one time, but every single time I did that, in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to drink again. It was just a matter of, how long could I go this time? Like, I really did want to, quit. I wanted to get this problem behind me. But again, that craving that was happening in my brain, it was just like, I'm going to give into this eventually. It's just a matter of when. So that was sobriety before TSM. It was really difficult. It was white knuckled. It required a lot of willpower, a lot of restraint. And it didn't get easier. Like, I was sober for 6 months. Like, that's quite a while. And I could just, like, the more time went on, I was like, okay, I'm going to drink. Like, I'm going to drink. I know it's going to happen. And the contrast now to being sober through TSM, it was a total accident for me to quit drinking through this treatment. I was never, ever planning it. Even after a year on this treatment, when I did quit drinking, it took me 4 months to really come to terms with the fact that I didn't want to drink anymore, because it was a lot. It was a big decision, essentially. But the sobriety through TSM just doesn't compare, because I have no desire for alcohol now. My brain has been fixed to the point where, there could be a bottle of ketchup sitting there or a bottle of wine, and I'm not triggered by either one of them. Like, oh, it's ketchup, or oh, it's wine. Whereas before, if I saw that bottle of wine, I'd start salivating. I'd want to open it. I'd want to drink it. And it's just, I'm completely indifferent to it now. And I don't have those, I don't have any cravings, honestly. Like, I'll think about drinking sometime if I'm, I live in like an area where there's a lot of wineries. So if I'm driving past a winery, it's like, oh, like, I remember when I used to go and day drink and go to all these wineries, and it's more of a passing thought as opposed to a craving. And so it's really this freedom from the alcohol completely. And I often tell people, it's like alcohol has become my least favorite food. If someone's eating raw oysters in front of me, I don't want them. If they offer them to me, I can say no thanks. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. It's really an absolute non-issue. And that's what alcohol has become to me. Like, I have zero interest in it and zero desire for it, to where I could be at a party with, like, the finest champagne going around, and I literally could care less. So, when you don't desire something, it's really easy to not do it. And so it really brought this freedom, because I really feel as if the addiction has been erased from my brain, and it almost feels like it never happened before.
And I think for people that are listening for the first time, if they are, it takes a long time to get your head around the fact that that's the case. I mean, when every area that we work in, or abstinent-based programs, which we always say is good for the people that it works for. But when you're around the abstinent-based programs, and then somebody comes along and says, listen, there's a pill called naltrexone alongside a one-to-one support program, Thrive, or through us in the UK, then you can, like Katie's saying, you can reverse that whole process, and you can go back to living a normal life. Katie's chosen to not drink just now. Again, that might change down the track. But are there any common questions that you find come up? That's kind of throwing
common questions. I mean, I think, there's different questions during different phases. I think one of the common challenges is just the length of time that it takes. And, I guess this leads to maybe one of the common questions is, really, what is extinction? How do I know when I'm at extinction? Right? Because it's such a gradual process. People experience these little things that are happening along the way. And how do they really know, like, when I'm at extinction? When should I declare extinction?
Sorry, I had switched myself off there. And what can you explain extinction?
Do you want me to explain extinction? Yeah, sure. So extinction is just the short term for pharmacological extinction, which is it's a term that was used back in Dr. Sinclair's work in the early psychology work of operant conditioning. And really, pharmacological extinction just means using a medication to extinguish a behavior that has been learned over time, which is alcohol use disorder in this case, right? So we use the word extinction all the time in our programs, and for the outside world, I think sometimes we forget that that's not the context in which extinction is typically used, not the kind of dinosaur extinction, but this is like extinction or extinguishing of the addiction to alcohol. So that's the context in which it's used in TSM. And so extinction really is the holy grail of TSM. So extinction is not the same necessarily as abstinence, as you were just referring to. Extinction really means that you're no longer craving alcohol, that you no longer feel like alcohol is controlling you anymore, that you really have the choice to drink or not drink. You feel really indifferent to alcohol, like Katie has said, maybe even, maybe not revulsion, but maybe mild kind of just distaste for alcohol in general. And, most of the time you're not drinking. You might, if you are drinking at all, if alcohol has any role in your life, it's on occasion, and it's never to intoxication. You don't have blackouts, you don't have hangovers, you don't have regrets from things that you do when you drink. You no longer feel like alcohol is a problem in your life. If you choose to drink, it's not a problem at all. You just take your medication first. And most people, when they actually get to extinction, have kind of these kind of internal feelings of mastery. Like, this is something that I put in my past now. Of course, we always, we do encourage people from the very beginning to keep a drink log. And so our drink log is our objective picture of our progress. So, we describe extinction as a subjective experience. I do often, because it is kind of that internal experience of no longer feeling controlled by something. But the drink log is the objective picture, right? So that is something that you can take to your doctor or take to your spouse, or, post online. That drink tracker, it really does show, like, what does it look like in real life in terms of how does TSM play out in terms of how much somebody is actually drinking at extinction. And you'll usually see the graph be, all the way at 0 with maybe a little bump here and there for when they're out for a social drink now and then, right? So that's, my explanation of extinction is typically subjective, but I think the objective measurement of drink tracking can be a really powerful tool, especially when you're trying to convince people kind of outside the TSM world that this is an effective treatment, and that, even though you are having maybe a drink with them at the pub from time to time, that you really are no longer in the throes of AUD, and you can have this drink tracker that shows, see, I had 2 beers last Saturday, but then I went 6 days and I didn't have anything, right? So it gives that snapshot of a real true picture of what moderate drinking looks like if somebody chooses moderate drinking.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. That's one of the best, honestly, that's one of the best explanations I've heard. Thank you. Katie, I feel like a proper presenter tonight. So Katie, Karen.
A panel conversation.
Yeah. What was I going to say now? I've completely thrown me. A lot of people outside Sinclair Method, I think what I was going to say was what you guys are saying, the potential for the Sinclair Method is massive. It's absolutely massive. And I know you guys well enough to know that we never go down the road of knocking any other model, because if it works, I always say, if standing on your head reciting the alphabet backwards works, then we'll support it.
Yeah.
But taking away that, obviously, there's options, as Claudia says, option saves lives. So whatever model works for someone, absolutely fantastic. But if you've got a model in your hand that has a 78% clinically trial test success rate, the potential of that is massive. Where do you see it going, Katie, in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly have visions of it revolutionizing the treatment system as we know it. And, Karen and I have gone to conferences to try to advocate for it. And I think what we've taken away from it is that we are not here to change minds necessarily of the existing treatment system that's been around for nearly 100 years, but we're here to really go around it and provide an alternative treatment option, because we've just found that even talking with addiction professionals who are aware of naltrexone and aware of how it works, they're kind of poo-pooing it, if you will. They're kind of just moving on to the next thing, and they're not really as excited about it as we are. And so I feel like we have a responsibility to bring this forward, even though, you know, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not an addiction specialist, but I'm very passionate about this topic. I'm always learning about it. I have my personal experience, and, you know, I had the opportunity to coach and mentor hundreds of people over the years. So there's so much to be learned from that experience in the trenches, if you will. And so I think that with time, this could really revolutionize the treatment system, in that it could provide an alternative option for people who are kind of stuck in the cycle of, you know, abstinence and relapse, which, you know, I think we all have experienced how many people come from an AA background, and they come to TSM because AA just wasn't working for them. And AA works for the people it works for. You know, I think it's an awesome program for those people, but there's a lot of people who are not succeeding in that space, whether because of, like Karen was talking about, the alcohol deprivation effect. Maybe their drinking is mild or moderate AUD, and they don't really want to quit drinking. They just want to get more control. So the prescription of them, you know, telling them they can't ever drink again is just like unrealistic. So maybe they'll wait for their drinking to get a little bit worse before they take a treatment seriously. So you're so right, Bruce. There's so much opportunity to reach people with the Sinclair Method, and millions of people are struggling and have no idea something like this exists. And so that's kind of what motivates me every day, to just continue to spread the word and, you know, continue to reach people. Because so often when people learn about it and they start to see the progress, they're just like, the number one question is, why haven't I heard of this before? And they have hope for the first time. And of course, it's not a magic pill. You know, people struggle with compliance, people struggle with, you know, the need to change habits and things like that. So that's why we all, you know, guide people through that, the treatment for that reason. But it's not like anything else that's out there.
Yeah, no, thank you. And again, thanks for the questions. I'll come back to the questions in 1 second. I don't want to get off on that question, because when I get going on it, I don't stop. But Karen, how do you see the future with TSM?
Yeah, I mean, I think Katie said it really well. I see it as first line treatment for AUD. I mean, you know, there are, you know, science is evolving rapidly. There may be something better than TSM on the horizon that works more quickly or more effectively. But for now, right now, this is the best that we've got. And, you know, at 78%, one of the doctors that we spoke with recently who's worked with hundreds of patients said he thought it was closer to 98% success rate, you know, for people that were compliant. So, you know, I think that's the kind of the key point there for people that are compliant. You know, the trick with TSM is, even though it's a harm reduction treatment, compliance is essential, and 100% compliance is essential. And it's that one non-negotiable that if people struggle with that, they won't be successful. And I would say that probably accounts for a good percentage of, you know, the gap between that 78% and that 98% are the people that struggle with compliance. They're not taking the medication consistently every single time. And that is the kind of, the one non-negotiable of this, that the one black and white rule that you can't break if you want this to work is compliance. And, you know, everything else is somewhat optional. Drink tracking, we highly encourage support. We highly encourage, you know, lots of other things, but that one piece can't be fiddled with. And so I just think that, you know, the future of naltrexone is really bright if people understand how the medication works and how to use it properly. It's a really low risk medication. You know, there are some side effects from time to time, but they're not dangerous ones. They're more just kind of annoying side effects that usually are able to be mitigated, you know, within a short period of time for most people. One of the other doctors that I spoke with recently, he said his opinion was it had an impact on the liver of about a Tylenol. So, you know, even though it is processed by the liver, that, you know, the impact on the liver is minimal at the dosages that are used with TSM. And the offset of, the amount of alcohol that's reduced is far more beneficial to the liver than any impact that the medication itself would have, right? And so I just think that it's, why not use this medication? Why not give it to everybody that, has a question about their drinking and see if it can help them? With the right education, the right support, the right, expectations of what the medication can do. And I think, certainly there are times that TSM is not appropriate. If somebody isn't going to be compliant with the protocol, if they know that they can't rely on themselves to wait an hour, then it's not the right approach for them. If they want to be abstinent tomorrow, they want to go from 50 drinks a week to nothing tomorrow, TSM's not the right approach for them, right? So it isn't for everyone. Like, nothing is for everyone, right? But for people that have the right expectations and the right approach, it's very highly likely to work over a period of time.
Brilliant. Yeah, and it's just hard to get that across. That's what I find the harder. So thank you very much, Andy. I've seen your questions coming up. We'll cover them one by one, I think, as we go through. I might go to Katie first for the first one. And I think what you're asking, is the Sinclair method a gradual dose reduction technique? In other words, are we reducing the medication? I'm guessing you're asking as time goes on. Can I leave that one with you, Katie? Are we reducing medication as time goes on?
We're not reducing the dose of naltrexone as time goes on. The clinically proven dose is 50 milligram tablet. So that's taken before someone drinks, and in a targeted dose an hour or two before they drink. And over time, what that's doing, it's a gradual drink reduction approach. So they're using that dose of the medication, naltrexone, which here in the US has been FDA approved for treatment of alcoholism since 1994. It's a very benign, safe, non-addictive medication. So that's taken before someone drinks, and over time they're gradually reducing their drinking through this treatment protocol because of how naltrexone is working inside of the brain to essentially block the reward reinforcement that comes from alcohol, which is really what drives the alcohol use disorder behavior.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next one is a successful delivery of psychological homeostasis after correctly managed withdrawal will secure success. Psychological issues tend to resolve upon delivery. And then that kind of runs into the next stage, is does it facilitate a safe withdrawal by preventing seizures? The safe withdrawal side, Karen, can you cover that?
Yeah, I would just say, for Andy, I think that his questions are just kind of pointing in a direction of kind of understanding how the mechanism of action of naltrexone. So naltrexone is an opiate blocker. So what a naltrexone does is it blocks the euphoria from alcohol. So what we're doing with the Sinclair method is we are systematically targeting the blockage of the opiate release in response to alcohol by taking the medication 1 hour before the first drink of the day. So this is operant conditioning. We're blocking the reward, which is the endorphin release, through the medication, so that when people drink, they don't get an excessive reward in their brain. And so it doesn't really directly reduce cravings in that sense. It isn't like a medication that you would use to facilitate alcohol withdrawal or detox. It's used in a different way. It's used to recondition the brain to not expect a reward from alcohol. And so the way it does facilitate a safe withdrawal is the way it works in the brain is that people take the medication before they drink, and they gradually, over a period of time, will reduce the amount of alcohol that they drink. It feels organic. So they just don't want to drink as much. And so over time, they find themselves drinking less and less and less. And it's done at such a pace, typically with the medication, that they don't have withdrawal symptoms because it's done over a period of days and weeks and months. And so that they don't have these acute withdrawal symptoms that they might have if they had tapered off very quickly. So I don't know if that answers your question, Andy. I hope it does. But in terms of does it reduce cravings, the answer is yes, but not in the way that you would think. So it's not a direct craving reducer. It works again kind of in the mechanism that we are retraining our brain over time. So by blocking that reward in your brain every time you drink, that over time your brain just loses interest in alcohol because it knows it's not going to get endorphins when you drink. So if that helps explain it, I know Steve suggested The Cure for Alcoholism, which is a great book that will kind of go into more detail about the research behind the medication and how it works, and you might find that of interest as well. So you said, last question, do alcohol and opiates work on the same receptors in the brain? And so yes, the answer is yes. So what we have found is that naltrexone also works for opiate addiction. So people that work in that field will give sometimes a shot of Vivitrol, which is an injectable shot of naltrexone, and or give naltrexone daily, and it will block the effect of opiates. And, along those same lines, for people who take opiate pain medication for some condition that they have, TSM would not be an appropriate treatment modality for them because it would block the effectiveness of their pain medication if they had something that they were treating. So good questions, Andy. Appreciate you pitching on those.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And I'm guessing as well, Andy, and again, we don't need to know because it's a public forum. I'm guessing that you, just with your questions and your knowledge, which is fantastic, is that you've got a professional connection somewhere. I don't know, I'm just guessing. But the reason I'm saying that is if you have any in-depth questions in regards to how the process works, and if we can forward on any information to you just to give you a lot more in-depth information, we're more than happy to do that. If you're in the UK, contact myself at Alcohol Recovery Scotland. If you're in the States, contact Thrive, Katie and Karen at Thrive. Again, feel free to fire. We've got another 15 minutes, I think. Any more questions, fire away. But if you need any more in-depth information, then we're more than happy to send it on to you. But thank you very much. It's a lot of times people do. Well, my background was working in alcohol and drug rehab center management. And when I first heard about the program, I'd never been trained in that area of neuroscience, how addiction works in that area. And I had hundreds and hundreds of questions. So absolutely fire away. Absolutely fire away. So. Okay, thanks, Andy. Any other questions, Andy, that we can cover just now? Just please fire them in the comments, and we're happy to answer it. What next, Katie? Katie, I'm going to pick on you until any other questions come in. Are there any other sort of standard questions that you've come across?
One that's coming up for me that I see as a comment on my social media from time to time is people who say, well, if it blocks the pleasure, then what's the point? Like, what's the point in drinking at all? And nobody's going to take a pill that's going to block the pleasure from alcohol. And I want to speak to that just from my personal experience with it, because, I can't speak to what somebody else is experiencing on naltrexone. But for me personally, even though the naltrexone is working to, block the release of endorphins in the brain when we drink, it wasn't an unpleasurable experience for me to drink on the medicine. It was less exciting, less of that like firework in my brain of, oh my gosh, yes, I need another drink. Where's the next drink? Where's the next drink? It kind of dulled that a bit, but it didn't make it something that was unenjoyable. I actually, like, for the first several months on TSM, like, I couldn't even really notice that I wasn't getting pleasure from alcohol. What I more noticed was that I didn't want that third, fourth, fifth, sixth drink. It's like I would just want to stop sooner than I wanted to stop previously. My first several drinks would feel pretty much normal to what it was before TSM, other than I wasn't just like obsessively thinking about another drink or, kind of off to the races once I started. So I personally still really enjoyed to drink alcohol for the duration of my TSM journey. I often tell people I enjoyed it more because I had a sense of self-control. I could trust myself again, that when I was going out with my friends to a winery, I would have maybe one or two glasses and I'd be done. Whereas before, that would have started off drinking for hours and hours, and I wouldn't remember the second half of the day. And so even though I wasn't getting that same euphoria from alcohol, I really didn't mind because I could still enjoy the alcohol. I could still experience even a little bit of a buzz. But it wasn't this thing that was out of my control anymore. So I just wanted to speak to that because that is a question that I get on a regular basis where people just think that, I don't know what they think, but maybe they're thinking that naltrexone just makes drinking this awful experience, but it's not true in my experience. It's more subtle and works more so to just help give that off switch over time to where, yeah, you enjoyed a couple drinks, but you don't feel like you have to have more. There's this compulsion to keep going. And I wanted to hear from Karen, if you don't mind, like, what was your experience drinking on the medicine? Did it completely block the pleasure, or?
Honestly, it was subperceptual to me. I didn't really notice. And I think, to your point, I think that some people do. I mean, I have had people that I've worked with that said they perceptually did notice the lack of euphoria. But I would say kind of the offset to that is the regained control. And I think for most people, feeling like they can go back out in a social setting again and trust themselves to like do maintain themselves, because most people by the time they get to TSM have had those, like, I don't know what's going to happen if I go out, or, get in a fight with their spouse or whatever. So I think the upside more than offsets like any kind of feeling of missing the euphoria. But I think for most people it is subperceptual, which is really interesting. That's something that subperceptual or that minimally perceptual can have so much of an impact on our behavior, right? Because driving that and that euphoria or that endorphin release in the background can really keep us stuck on something without even really being fully aware of it, right? So, but yeah, I would say, that it comes up from time to time, and that some people do notice it more than others in terms of they feel like they're missing that. Often I think people feel it like in that first sip of their drink, that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling that they get when they take that first sip, that they notice that flatness of that they don't kind of feel that feeling. But for the most part, most people don't notice a discernible difference in their experience. And I think it's really important to point out that naltrexone doesn't block any of the other effects of intoxication. So you still don't want to drink and drive. You still can make bad decisions. You still can say, inappropriate things. You're just not as likely to drink to the point that you're going to do that, right? So the medication helps you feel, like Katie says, so you don't have that desire, that compulsion to keep on going. And so that in and of itself, if you're drinking more slowly and maintaining a sense of presence, you're not becoming intoxicated. You're going to feel, more able to, make good decisions throughout the night and trust yourself in those situations. And so, again, I think the upside for most people is that regained control more than offsets any lack of euphoria that they feel.
Brilliant. Thank you, Karen. And thanks again, Andy. I'm trying to understand how an opiate reversal medication will medicate alcohol dependence. Simple explanation. The endorphin is coming off the opiate receptor, which is why the opiate blocker is working in that scenario. So obviously alcohol is not an opiate, but it's coming off the opiate receptor. Now, again, if you've got any training in that area, that's a very, very, very simple explanation to the whole thing. It is classified as, well, an explanation that I was told by actually Roy Escarpa, who wrote the book, is that alcohol is classified as what they call a dirty drug. So it does use the GABA receptors, it does use the opiate receptors. There are medications on the market that will blockers for the GABA receptors, but naltrexone is blocking the opiate receptor, where the huge section of the reward is coming from, which is why we use that one. So that's a very, very simple explanation. Again, if you need a more in-depth explanation to that, please feel free to get in touch with either of us, depending on where you are. Anyone else, anything else on that one? Or
I just want to make sure it's clear that naltrexone is not like a substitute medication like people go on for heroin addiction and things, Suboxone. It's nothing like that. It's blocking the reward reinforcement from alcohol. Yeah, like Bruce was saying, in the opiate receptors. So it's not like it's giving anyone the effect, any effect, that's helping them come down from the alcohol. It's more about just, blocking the reward from it. And like with human nature, if something isn't rewarding for us, it's natural for us to do it less often, or maybe eventually stop doing it. If you go to a delicious restaurant and then their food just gets worse and worse and worse over time, you probably won't go back to that restaurant very often. And if you drink repeatedly on naltrexone over many months and your brain isn't getting that endorphin reward and the other cascade effect of pleasure hormones that are produced when we drink alcohol, then you're not going to crave it as much. You're not going to want to do it as much. When you do drink, you're satisfied with one or two, and you don't feel like you need 6 or 10 drinks because you're not getting that flood of the reward from alcohol.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Andy is thinking of naloxone, because you said acute opiate overdose, and that's naloxone, which is a similar but not the same drug as naltrexone. So naloxone is what's used in the field with emergency medicine technicians, and they can reverse an opiate overdose in the field, but it is not the same medication.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I was about to say that. So thank you, Andy. It's great to have the in-depth questions. The other thing I was going to say as well, quickly, just on if you're in the UK, which I'm kind of guessing with your name, I don't know who you are, you use it in the States as well, but there's a medication called baclofen, which is sometimes, or some of the research is starting to show that it works. It works possibly. The research isn't complete yet, but it's working to a degree. Again, when I spoke to Dr. Roy Scarpa, who did the research with Dr. Sinclair, he explained to me that the baclofen is the equivalent of the methadone in what Karen was saying, that baclofen, when used at a much higher dosage, is giving the brain a reward and is therefore working as a complement, it's mood affecting and brain and mind altering. So it's giving that effect of alcohol. So they're taking people off alcohol and putting them onto baclofen, and that's why baclofen is used as an anti-craving medication. And that's why at a much higher dosage, it's working to a degree with alcohol. But as Karen's saying, naltrexone is not a replacement drug. It is not a substitute drug that is mood enhancing or mind altering in any way. So yeah, Andy was just saying, yeah, you're right, Karen. It's naloxone. Again, if you're in the UK, you know that naloxone is used by all the emergency services at the moment. So, so thanks, Andy. Appreciate that. So, Jane, memory's kept you once. Jane, further back, was saying, great to meet you, Karen, and thanks, Katie. We need to get Karen on more often. Your combined knowledge of TSM is fantastic. I'm going to say this because it's, I say it about Katie occasionally, but I don't say it about Karen because, well, it's the second time we've had Karen here. These two guys are pioneering an amazing work right the way through the States and further afield as well. The work that they're putting in, I've lucky enough to work with these guys behind the scenes on different things. And just their integrity and their honesty with stuff is incredible. I know just from working with them that their genuine heart and desire is to see people get to the point where they get through the AUD or the alcohol dependency. So thank you, guys. Do not stop what you're doing for any reason. Keep going what you're doing. Okay.
Same to you.
Thank you, Katie. Naloxone is much quicker acting but shorter lasting opioid. Yeah. Again, normally used for heroin overdose in this country, especially. I used to work in rehab centers and homeless shelters, and I've used it twice, and it reverses the effect quite quickly, and they don't thank you for it afterwards either. It's just the other thing. Slightly off topic, slightly, but why is benzodiazepine, benzo's withdrawal so much more protracted than alcohol withdrawals? Is anyone up to speed on benzos, or we call them benzos in this country?
I don't have a ton of knowledge of it. It works on a different system in the brain, and benzodiazepine withdrawal is one of the most difficult withdrawals and the most uncomfortable and dangerous withdrawals that are out there. So, but it's a completely different kind of withdrawal than alcohol is. So yeah, it's not, as far as I know, it's not affected by naltrexone.
And it's something that we do here in Andy, is that whenever, and I know the guys do it in the States, we're not just three people that have decided to start throwing naltrexone at people and hoping that it works. We work very, very closely with medical doctors alongside what we do. So here in the UK, I work with a specialist who does all the medical side of things. He does all the prescribing, any medical situations that arise. And I know Karen and Katie work with the same right across the States. So we're not dealing with any side of that. We're dealing with the alcohol reduction program, whereas the medical side is we work very, very closely with the medical, with medical experts, doctors, psychiatrists, along that side of things. So we have a level of knowledge on things, but when it comes to anything medical, I've got a doctor right by my hand, so I tend to to shout on him very often. So
yeah, and just a quick note on that topic. There's some evidence that naltrexone could work for other types of substances, but we at Thrive, and I know for you, Bruce, we're very, very focused on alcohol specifically, because the research is just very clear that targeted naltrexone works very well for alcohol use disorder and alcohol dependency. And so we're just laser focused on that. It doesn't mean that there isn't validity and, working in treatments for other types of addictions, and opiates and benzodiazepines are certainly a problem for some people, but we are just laser focused on alcohol. Alcohol is so ubiquitous, and it's such a huge problem that just permeates the cultures of the world, that we have our hands full with this one thing, right? So it's not that we don't have the interest in other addictions and the potential for naltrexone to help those other addictions, but we just are very focused on alcohol because it's such a unique substance. It's so ubiquitous in our world and in our socializing and in our advertising, and it's very different from any other substance that's out there, even tobacco. Because it's tobacco is fortunately become kind of demonized, and alcohol is still very glorified. You don't see people going out to a restaurant and sipping on benzodiazepines or eating opiates, right? So alcohol is just part of what we deal with every day, and so it really is a different animal in a lot of respects than other substances, and even substances of abuse, because of the ubiquitousness of it in our society. So I just wanted to make that point to Andy, that we weren't trying to be dismissive about these other substances, but we are very focused on alcohol and using naltrexone for that purpose. So.
That's very well put. Thank you, Karen. And just another quick back one. We have to be, the research has been completed extensively with alcohol. There is talk, for example, that it works well with food in some areas. However, the research is not complete in that area. So we have to be very careful. There's a lot of other questions. Does it work with heroin? Does it work with cocaine? Does it work with amphetamine, etc., etc.? The research is not complete on it, so that's still going on and being done by the medical researchers. And hopefully, in time, if it was an option, then that would be something that could come out down the future. But that has to be done on the back of full research. So okay, but thanks, Andy. I know. But many, thanks very much. Alcohol dependent individuals become reliant on benzos during withdrawal. Absolutely, yeah. So I here in the UK, again, I'm not sure where you are, Andy, but here in the UK, I don't know if it's the same in the States. GPs here in the UK have stopped giving what they call home detoxes because of the addiction to benzos. That what guys were doing was that they were drinking too much. They would get a benzodiazepine, diazepam withdrawal for a week, and then they would relapse. They'd go back to drink, so they were on and off and on and off, and eventually end up addicted to two substances. So here in the UK, they've actually stopped that with most situations. Okay, thanks, Andy.
Bruce, I think we missed a
sorry,
question from Jane earlier.
Sorry?
Jane says, if my memory is correct, did you once say that just taking the pill, waiting for an hour, and then drinking is not TSM? I.e., you should do something while waiting for the hour to pass. Katie, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Taking naltrexone and waiting an hour and then drinking is actually exactly the Sinclair Method protocol. That's precisely what it is. So that is the Sinclair Method. But the other side of the Sinclair Method is really habit, lifestyle, behavior changes. So, if someone's just taking the pill and drinking and not really doing anything else, if they're not logging their drinks, if they're not having a meal before they start drinking, if they're not practicing mindful drinking, setting goals, changing habits, all of these things that come along with any lifestyle behavior change, they may stall in their progress, or they may get stuck in patterns of habitual drinking, even when following the Sinclair Method protocol to a T. But no, taking the medicine, waiting an hour, and drinking is exactly what the Sinclair Method is. And then in programs like ours, we really guide people through the behavioral side of it so that they can make the most out of the treatment and really ultimately create a life that just doesn't revolve around alcohol anymore, whether that means they're drinking safely and moderately, or if they decide to go alcohol free. Anything else you want to add there, Karen?
No, I mean, I think that, in terms of like what you should do while waiting for the hour to pass, I think a lot of people do find it helpful to do something to distract themselves, whether that's going for a walk or, having some kind of filler that you do for that time so that you're not just sitting there for the whole hour watching the clock, and obsessing. And some people even find waiting a little longer than an hour that they feel even more control. So for people, depending on what your drinking pattern is, Jane, if you're, a daily drinker and 5 o'clock's kind of your hour where you get home from work and tend to pour that first glass of wine, you might consider like setting your alarm for 3:30. And, maybe, before you leave work, you take your medication and then you have your drive home and you go for a walk and you have a routine that you do before you take your first drink. So there's lots of different strategies that are helpful in terms of, occupying that time for that hour to pass. So you don't just feel like you're obsessing about waiting for that hour. And that's the kind of things that, Katie's talking about in terms of being more mindful and not just relying on the medication to do all the work, right? Actually taking some time to think about, all right, well, what are some ways that I can do to kind of distract myself or push back the hour that I have my first drink of each night, or, have a different drink that I enjoy in the meantime. So those little kinds of behavioral things that the medication can help you be more successful with, trying those new little tiny behavioral tweaks, because you're not being driven by cravings all the time. So hopefully that's helpful and that answered your question.
Thanks, Karen. And Andy's saying that, in this country, Librium is the drug of choice in all detoxes. So do you have Librium in the States? Librium is just a slightly less addictive form of detox. So Librium is the choice in the UK alcohol centres. Andy deals with cross addiction. Amazing, Andy. Thank you for what you do. Absolutely amazing. So I'm hoping the medication might give you some hope for the benzodiazepine. I can never say it. I just call it benzos. Let's call it benzos in this country. Issues as well. Again, like I said, Andy, if you need any further information, specific details on that, the doctor I work with very closely, I'm sure would be more than happy to pass on any further specific information in dual addictions. if it was required. And again, feel free to give me a phone anytime, or get in touch. More than happy to cover that. So I think, sorry, James is saying, thanks for the explanation, ladies. Katie and Karen, the next country you guys should visit is Scotland. Yes, I agree with that one. And the Highlands. It's better than Thailand and Israel, she says. Don't know about the sunshine, but they'll come in the summertime. And I'm not going to say publicly on air, but the area where Karen lives, and Katie, the area where Karen lives in is absolutely stunning, and Katie is just, there's sunshine everywhere. So we need to do a 2-year conference where we'll have 1 year conference in the States and 1 year conference up here in Scotland in the Highlands. But in the summertime where it's slightly warm. Have you guys ever heard of midges? No. We'll stay away from the West Coast. When you go away tonight, Google midges or YouTube midges, and they're little tiny little things that bite you, and they're not fun. But Scottish things. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I think we've come to the end. Time just flown past again. Karen, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Anytime.
You are more than welcome anytime you want.
Thank you for having me.
And Katie as well. And Katie, thank you again. So Katie comes on every month. And Karen, any month you want to come, you're more than welcome to come along. Midges and benzos. I'll tell you what, Andy, maybe we can give the benzos to the midges, and that might slow them down a bit.
Business idea.
Oh, yeah, that's an idea. Or we have to somehow, I was going to say export them to England or something, but that's we've tried that one before. Anyway, thank you very much, ladies. Please. Oh, sorry, if you're in the States, or you need to get in touch with Katie and Karen, along the bottom there, thrivealcoholrecovery.com. The guys are doing an amazing work with what they're doing. From what they're doing. If you're in the UK and you want to get in touch with us, alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk, or just email me, Bruce at alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk. But yep, we hope and really hope that down the track, the Sinclair Method, we can educate people a little bit more, and then the next 5-10 years that it can become not the only. I think there's a big danger in models of recovery stating that they are the only model. There are lots of different models that work very well for different people. So we would just like the Sinclair Method, due to its success, to be a number one option, not a number one option, but up there with everything else where people have that option. They can choose to take it if they want. So, yeah. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you,
Karen.
Bruce. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Bruce.
We'll be here again next month if anyone wants to come and join us. So thank you very much, and we'll speak to you all soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.